it's Natasha.
And KC.
And we are the co-hosts of
Woke and Free.
Thank you for tuning into our 30th episode, woohoo, of Woke and Free. If you've been tuning in every week for Woke and Free Wednesday, you know that Woke and Free is all about being real and honest with each other and you. We talk about everything and anything that's important to us, to you, the world, and nothing is off the table. Now, in this episode, we're really excited to be talking about doing environmental good with business, in particular with a very special guest. We had Project Repat co-founder Nathan Rothstein on. But before we dive deep into the episode, we have a couple of ground rules to cover. First, have you subscribed to Woke and Free on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, SoundCloud, and iHeartRadio? If not, please do. We greatly appreciate your love and support of the show. Second, have you shared an episode? Definitely consider sharing an episode with friends, with family. This episode, any of our past episodes. Sharing is caring, guys. And then, of course, we're very active on social media, so always feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WokeNFree.
Each week, we like to share something about us before we dive into the topic for the episode. Last week, we shared what was the silliest thing we did as kids. This week, we're going to talk about t-shirts. Favorite t-shirts, that is.
Okay, so this one's actually hard for me because as someone who loves fashion, dressing room mate, I would say, it changes. I don't know if I have one t-shirt that would be like my all-time favorite forever in a day. I would say that I have different obsessions, as you know, hubby. So there was definitely a time where I was all about like Janet Jackson. And so my favorite t-shirt at the time was like a Janet Jackson, like a vintage t-shirt actually. Then I was all about Hello Kitty t-shirt that I have. I slept in it. It was literally my BFF outside of you, my dear. So there was that. But now I would say my current favorite t-shirt is a Black Panther t-shirt, Wakanda forever. And it pretty much says Wakanda versus everyone else. And so that's like my current favorite t-shirt. How about you?
I like my Black Panther t-shirt. It's great and all, but my favorite t-shirt has to do with one of the best villains of all time, and it's Darth Vader, of course. It's a Star Wars t-shirt.
Always.
What's cool about this Star Wars t-shirt is it's like a custom-made thing. So what it is it has like all these stormtrooper helmets, and it's all like lined up in rows and rows. And then every like other row it has a Darth Vader face on it. So I like that. It's kind of cool because you see all these stormtroopers in white, and then you have the black Darth Vader as a contrast.
Shout out to Society 6. Woohoo!
Yeah, and that's where I got the shirt from.
Absolutely. So now that we've covered that, I think it's definitely time to share a little bit about our guest before we get to the conversation with him. So who is Nathan Rothstein? So he's one of the co-founders of Project Repat. Repat is creating jobs in the USA by upcycling people's old clothes into memory blankets. Since launching in 2012, Repat has prevented over 5 million t-shirts from getting dumped in landfills and created 70 jobs in Massachusetts and North Carolina. Over 200,000 people have bought a t-shirt quilt. Inc. magazine recently named Repat the 9th fastest growing retail company, and the company has been featured in Fast Company, the Boston Globe, WBUR, MSNBC, and Entrepreneur magazine. Mr. Rothstein served as an America Corps volunteer in post-Katrina New Orleans after he graduated from the UMass Amherst Honors College in 2006. He spent 4 years in New Orleans working on different recovery-related projects. So without further ado, let's get into the conversation with Nathan Rothstein.
Hi, Nathan. This is Khalil. It's great to have you on our show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, so on our show, we like to share something personal about ourselves before we start. So on this episode, we thought we'd ask you, what's your all-time favorite t-shirt?
So I grew up in Boston, and I grew up a Celtics fan, and I have this T-shirt that I got actually a couple of years ago, but it's like it was made in the early '90s, and it's about it has Reggie Lewis, Kevin Gamble, and Dee Brown on it, and they were the rising stars. They didn't necessarily turn out the best, but and Reggie Lewis died tragically, but uh, Reggie Lewis was my hero growing up, and I love wearing that T-shirt.
Awesome.
Okay.
Very cool.
All right. So now to jump into our other questions, what drove you to be so passionate about protecting the environment?
Yeah, so I think I came to this business kind of with a lot of different agendas and interests. And I think when you start a business, you start in some place, but you drift until you find market fit. But my business partner Ross and I were really looking at how do you utilize all the clothes that people have in their closet that they no longer wear, but they don't necessarily want to get rid of. And we were aware of all of the textile waste. And my business partner had spent time in East Africa, and you see all the T-shirts that wind up there, sold in these secondary markets. And we've also done research around all of the how much water goes into each T-shirt. So it was just something that we were interested in, and we wanted to create a business that people wanted to buy, that would create a job, but also prevent the T-shirts from getting dumped in landfills.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay. And when it comes to like people and their old T-shirts, like where did you like get the data to kind of figure out what people were doing with them? Was it just like what you were saying, just like seeing it out in the marketplace, or was there like certain resources you used as a business owner to kind of figure out this is what you wanted to work on, this is how you were going to move forward?
Yeah, so we started by making these tote bags and scarves out of T-shirts that we thought looked really cool, and it was finding retro shirts and putting them together with other random shirts, and it was fun for us to kind of sift through different Goodwill and Salvation Army, and then different donated where shirts are donated. But we started selling them at local markets, like literally like a marketplace outdoors, like a farmer's market. And people were interested in them, but we started to hear people ask us and say, well, what can you do with my T-shirts? And can you turn my T-shirts into a quilt? And at first, we didn't necessarily really want to do that. We thought we had made these fashion-forward tote bags and scarves, and we were excited about that, and everyone told us it was a great idea. But our bank account was dwindling, and the business wasn't really going anywhere. So we tried to make the quilt in a similar way that we made the scarf, by just sewing T-shirt panels together. And apparently what Americans wanted was an affordable way to preserve their memories as a patchwork quilt blanket. So that's what worked, and that's how we got there.
Interesting.
So how does the process work then to get your T-shirts made into a quilt with the project Repat?
Yeah, so people go on our site and they pick out what size quilt they want, and determined by how many shirts they want to use. And we can use both sides of your shirt, and we can use jerseys and sweatshirts and flannel shirts as well. And then once you order, you get an email with shipping directions, and we have two production partners, one in North Carolina, one in Massachusetts. And so based on where you live, you send it there, and then a couple weeks later, you get back your quilt.
And just out of curiosity, is there a way to say someone wants the quilt, but they're too in love with their T-shirts, right? And they're like, no, I don't want to use it or something. Is there a way you can provide T-shirts, or no, it's you, like the person buying the quilt has to kind of give the shirts or the material as well?
Yeah, we have to use your shirt, so you have to break up with them for a couple weeks and then you'll get them back.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, here in New York, right, there's a discussion for whether our state is going to be kind of in a plastic bag free zone, right? So we live in Long Island. They've already started the process out in the county that we're in. But, it seems like an obvious question that like all states, countries, nations need to think about, like, should we be more environmentally friendly? But somehow it seems like for the United States, that it seems like we need a lot more coaxing as a culture to be more environmentally concerned. Like, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think our entire economy has been built around buying stuff and buying new stuff, and then I think about clothes and how people talk about their clothes, and a lot of times when you talk about clothes, you talk about, oh, I got this great T-shirt, and it was also 25% off, or I got this cute dress and it was 30% off. And like, just the way that people talk about their clothes, they talk about the discounts they get, and we live in this discount culture. And when people think about price first, they're not necessarily thinking about all of the environmental aspects of that shirt. So like, if you walk into H&M and you buy a $7 shirt, that shirt was probably made in not the best working conditions outside the U.S. A lot of, probably about 600 gallons of water were used just to make that one shirt. And it's not necessarily that people are bad. It's just it's so tough to break yourself from that mindset. And I mean, if you just look at H&M alone, they produce like 400 million products a year, and about 20% of those products go unsold, and so then it has to basically get resold or go into the landfill. So there's just a whole system that's propping up the excess clothing, and I try to think about it as buying stuff that you want and you think will last, instead of looking at what's the lowest price possible and what's the best deal that I'm getting. And that shift in that mindset may help people buy a little bit less, but their stuff lasts longer.
Interesting. Okay.
So besides taking their T-shirts and recycling them into these quilts that you make, what else do you think people can do to be more environmentally conscious?
Yeah, so I think the definitely the shift, the mindset of clothing, and for me, I think about the environment, and also in terms of who's making your clothes and whether we're treating the people making our stuff well as well. So, there's been a race to the bottom over the last 50 years of where we can produce clothes for the cheapest. Like at one point it was in New England, and then it moved to the South, and then it moved to Mexico, and then to China, and then to the Far East, and then to Africa. And so companies have always chased cheap labor, and also when you're the further away that you're making something, the more resources that you have to use from the environment to make it. So I think if people just kind of start looking more at the tags on their clothes of where things are made. I mean, it's tough to buy all 100% U.S., but just to think about, who's making this, and is it a company that treats its workers well? And I think some of that has started to bubble up in the food culture, where people are looking at like where our food is made, and they're trying to buy food that's close to them. It hasn't necessarily translated to the clothing industry, but I think once you start changing consumer behavior around that, it could go a long way.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. And it seems politically, right, we definitely see that conversation of, our jobs in the U.S. are going overseas. We need to bring them back. And, you are doing a wonderful job with a successful company to do that. But why do you think there's been, I guess, a delay in our economy where other US companies aren't kind of doing what you're doing and taking the initiative to make sure that we do have jobs here in the US for the products or services that they're offering?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny when people talk. I mean, that national debate. I think it's a simple conversation, but it's a much more complicated issue. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, most of the jobs, at least in the textile industry, are not coming back. I mean, the reason why our business works is because we're making a highly custom product. Why it works to be made in the U.S. It's a highly custom product, and customers have to ship their shirts to us, and they have to trust that they'll get it back. And if they had to ship it to China, it wouldn't make monetary sense. So our business is made in the U.S. and we feel good about that, but that's because it really works for our business.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a company that's just making T-shirts or jeans, I mean that production has left the U.S. 30 years ago mostly, and is probably not coming back. I mean, what probably will come back is robots that are making clothes, and there's people that are administering those robots, managing the computer software. That's where I think the economy is going. But unfortunately, that's going to leave a lot of people out of the workforce.
Interesting.
Wow. Project Repat is the ninth fastest growing retail company. The company's been featured in Fast Company, the Boston Globe, WBUR, MSNBC, and Entrepreneur Magazine. What would you say is the secret to the success of your business?
I like to say is that we've had no allegiance to any idea that doesn't work. And so one of the things that helps continue our business relationship with my business partner too is we don't have any egos about whose idea was to do this or do that, and we really let the customers decide what we're gonna focus on or not. So I think so many businesses, when they're starting off, they have this mindset of, all right, I need to do my business exactly the way I planned it out, that I wrote in my business plan. I need to make 50% margins off every product, and blah 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 blah. all these things like in your plan, but entrepreneurship is such a roller coaster, and you really have to ride the highs and the lows. And so we really, as that story about not sticking to the tote bags and pivoting to something that we saw worked, and then once you find something that works, you just pour water on it and really work on letting it grow.
Absolutely. Okay. And I guess just off of that question, what would be the most meaningful thing that you've learned as an entrepreneur?
There's so many lessons. I mean, I think you have to. I think really, I've seen the benefit of a partnership, of working together, where there's times where your business is just not doing well and you're really down and out, and you need someone to pick you up. I mean, it's similar to a non-business relationship where at different points you have different mood swings, and you're excited about things while someone else is not, and you just have to really work together to ride out those emotional roller coasters, because it can be hard. I mean, we were living in our office for the first year. We almost ran out of money multiple times. I mean, there was just a lot of roadblocks that were put in front of us, and it takes a lot of perseverance and grit to fight through those things.
Absolutely. Do you have any like upcoming projects or initiatives or campaigns that people should like be on the lookout for?
So we just opened up our first retail store, so customers can come in and see examples, and then they can get help with some of the questions about preparing the shirts, and they can lay out all their shirts and take a photo, and so we can design it exactly the way they want it. So we just opened that in the Boston area, and if it goes well, we'd like to open more stores around the country.
Very cool, and you definitely have to come to New Very, very awesome.
Yeah.
I know our prices suck though, so I do apologize for that. New York retail is they are not playing. That game is serious.
But I mean, isn't Boston pricing not?
True, it's probably pricey there for you too, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, but we're, already it's just, I think it's a great experience for customers who, they want to see what the back of the fleece feels like. They want to ask someone some questions. I mean, I think a lot of people are comfortable shopping online, but we definitely have an audience too that's older, maybe haven't shopped as much online as other consumers, and it's just nice to interact with someone in person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we have one last question to ask you. What is one thing no one knows about you?
My middle name is Mordechai.
Really? That is fascinating. Is there a story behind that?
It was my grandfather, and my mom grew up in Mexico City, and her family immigrated there from Lithuania, and yeah.
Very cool and very sweet. Awesome.
Oh, wow.
Well, thank you, Nathan. We have enjoyed speaking with you and having you be a guest on Woke and Free, where we know that everyone listening is definitely going to take your wisdom and insight, and definitely, want to know more about your company and the great work you're doing. So we'll definitely share all the details on WokeNFree.com. But thank you so much, Nathan.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We are at that time again. Oh my gosh, it's the end of our 30th episode of Woke and
Free.
Woohoo! Yes, absolutely. I can't believe, can you believe it? We made to 30.
Yeah. I knew it all along. It was no secret that this would happen.
I love the confidence, love. Very nice.
I thought this was our 1,000th episode.
Jesus, it felt that long? Very nice. Okay, well, on upward and onward, I guess. We will keep it moving. And just for everyone listening, again, what did we talk about in this episode? We talked about doing environmental good with business, and particularly with our special guest, Project Repat co-founder Nathan Rothstein. So that was an amazing conversation. As always, will I leave you hanging for what our next episode will be all about? Drum roll, please.
On our next episode, we will be talking about recruiting realities with Amy Goldstein, the founder of Grayson Allen. Make sure you follow us on social media to follow along in the conversation, and make sure you tune in next week for Woke and Free Wednesday. To join the conversation at WokeNFree.com.
If you want to be a guest on the show, which I know you do, make sure you submit a topic for an upcoming episode, or share how you feel about some of the subjects that we've already covered on our Contact Us page at WokeNFree.com. And I will say it until the cows come home, guys. We love to hear from you on social media. Hit us up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at WokeNFree.
If you didn't already subscribe, please do. Share the episode. And make sure you come back to join the conversation every Wednesday for Woke and Free Wednesdays. Until next time, folks.